This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you!
Boring. 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 Boring.
You gotta do it. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're gonna feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember what you're doing. You're in no position to dictate what we're gonna feel.
I call again for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, the return of the sausages, the hostages.
Welcome, one and all. Lembit Öpik here on Lembit Öpik Live. There's a clue in the name there, on Unprecedented TV. And thank you so much for the ever-increasing numbers. Sounds like propaganda, but there we go. We'll be talking about propaganda on the show today. But thanks for the ever-increasing numbers watching the station. It really does help us a lot. And please do subscribe at Unprecedented TV on YouTube. If you can't find it straight away, put Unprecedented TV Lembit, Lembit, then you'll get there straight away. But we're going up what's called the search engines, and soon you'll just find us as the number one thing. Anyway, really good to have your company today. Do keep watching. We're very close to having a pretty regular schedule now. It should start in UK time at 7 a.m. and go right through till 2 and often till 4 p.m. It's all part of the progression of Unprecedented TV. If you've got an idea of a show you think we should do let us know. We still have some opportunity to be flexible, and if you'd like to be on a show, let us know as well. And we are open for advertising now, so do get in touch as well. At Lembit Öpik might be the best way to direct message me on X, but lots of other ways as well. Enough of that. Let's talk about the subject today. Are you scared of China? Does China, as the great American president says, give you some sort of a fear in your tummy? Do you get goosebumps when you see their supremo Xi Jinping, one of the most powerful men in the world, observing their mighty military? Or is this a storm in a teacup, a giant teacup all the same, but a storm in a teacup? The reason I ask this question is because we repeatedly at the moment, if you're watching this live in particular, hear that China has been spying on the United Kingdom. And there's an infamous case of a spy ring. Is it a ring if there's two people? Probably more than two people if there are some spying activities going on. But we keep hearing about the collapse of this spy ring trial. And everyone's blaming everyone else. The Crown Prosecution Service is saying that it's the government's fault because they didn't supply the evidence. The government says nothing to do with us, Gov. It was to do with the previous government. But why are we so concerned in the first place? Everybody spies on everyone all the time. Does it really matter? Does it make a difference? And why would we be so terrified of a country that makes most of the stuff we buy? Oh, yes. Far from reducing our carbon dioxide footprint, we've merely exported it. And the greatest irony of all is this. Probably China generates more carbon dioxide than Britain would have to make the same things. I'm not concerned about that. Regular viewers know that I laugh in the face of the climate hoax. If anything, we should be producing more carbon dioxide because it makes the world greener. That's my opinion. And so we should be thanking China for generating the food of life, the very thing that our plants breathe, that makes them stronger, the gas that the farmers put into their greenhouses to get a better crop. Yes, that's carbon dioxide. So that's a good thing, potentially, that China does. In addition, they make things faster, cheaper, and with more variety than Britain could ever afford to do. My argument, therefore, is that China is good for us, that we shouldn't think of China as a great foe. And even if we did, it's pointless. They've got 20 times the people. They've got an army orders of magnitude larger than ours, and no reason to invade us, because every household in the United Kingdom will have something that was made in China. That's my argument. But I know I might be in a minority of one on the program today, because Nick Buckley doesn't necessarily agree. He joins us today. Nick, good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good, thank you. I've recovered from a holiday. I've still got a nice tan, and now I'm officially not known anymore now as Nick the Greek.
Well, Actually, I found a better way of getting a tan. I just have really good lights. It's cheaper. But people say you're looking well. Yes, the lights do that for me. You were in Crete. Before we go into talking about China, I love Crete. I think it's a great island. What did you make of it?
I've been once or twice before. This holiday was basically a do-nothing holiday. Sat by the pool. It rained a little bit, but it's to be expected in October. But it's lovely food, lovely people, lovely. I did nothing. I just relaxed.
And how long were you there altogether?
7 days.
It looked fantastic. Your internet was great as well, incidentally. Arguably better than where you are now. But you look happy. The difference is you actually look happy at the moment, and that's a telltale sign that someone's only just arrived in Britain.
Yeah. Well, I'm beginning to get a bit upset now because there's this gentleman who I like, who's beginning to talk about how he likes China and how he doesn't think China's a threat, and that's beginning to upset me.
Well, I thought this could be a historical first for us. Normally, we agree on quite a lot of stuff, but you don't seem to take the same position as me. Let me put my position, and it's prompted by this spy case that I've been looking at. Two unlikely lads, or maybe likely lads, there they are, accused of spying for China. They don't look like Chinese spies. You'd think they'd be all sophisticated and everything else. They just both look very surprised. So apparently these two, whose names I can't even remember, actually, to be honest, they've been accused of spying. There was meant to be a big case. The case collapsed. The Crown Prosecution Service says it's the government's fault. The government says it isn't. But I have a fundamental point, and I think this is where we need to argue. I don't think that China's a problem. I don't mind what China's looking into. The government leaks like a sieve. If you want to find something out, they'll probably leak it anyway. And even if they didn't, and China finds things out, what possible threat does China present to us, Nick? What is it that you're so scared of?
We need to look at this in several ways. So let's go to first of all the big issue. China is the only world threat to the West. Russia's not a threat. Russia is a sideshow. China is the big threat. Why is it the big threat? You've mentioned some of it in your introduction. They're a huge country with a huge army, spending a fortune on military, and they have ambitions. Why do they have ambitions? First of all, because of a dictatorship. For a dictatorship to survive, they always need to have external enemies. So the people are always looking externally, not internally. They've got an issue with Taiwan. They think Taiwan belongs to the Republic of China. And I think in the psychology of the Chinese is the 100 years of embarrassment where parts of China were run by the West. You know, looking at Hong Kong, looking at Macau, the British were running parts of Shanghai. The Japanese invaded, humiliated them, and they have that in their subconscious that they were humiliated over several hundred years. Now they've become a power, and I think they want to flex that power. I think they're looking at expanding their empire. They've already invaded Tibet in the 1950s. They're looking at other stuff. Russia is terrified of China marching into that part of Russia. And I think what's going to cause this will be this scenario. China is a massive country, so many times bigger than Europe. And you look at how many countries are in Europe compared to China. China is a mono state. As it's getting richer, the middle class is getting bigger. Certain areas now in China want independence. They want to break away. So China may not end up being a threat to the West because it implodes upon itself, which has happened many times before. But when it gets to that stage where it looks like it might implode, China then will create not scenario, will create an emergency that they have to invade someone else to try to unite their people. And I just think they're a huge threat. So let's deal with that one first of all.
Okay, well, first of all, you've got an awful lot of comments coming in, by the way. This has really got good morning, columnids, and 88 saying, why are they not governing the West? We'll come back to those comments in a minute. Let's just have a look at that picture. If we can put the Chinese military picture up again, that'd be quite good. Thank you. That's a dramatic shot, but figuratively, it tells a story. The Chinese army has millions of people in it. We haven't even got, by the looks of it, enough troops to defend 20 miles of English Channel. If China, for some weird reason, wanted to invade Britain, we wouldn't have a chance. The good news is they're not going to. They don't want to invade Britain. So from a military point of view, I think the prospect of China trying to invade and conquer any British territory is zero. But if they wanted to, they could win. So just starting with this military point, are you saying that China really represents a military threat? Now, I've got to declare an interest here. I was the deputy chair of the all-party China group when I was an MP. And I did it because I worked in Guangzhou quite a lot for a company called Procter & Gamble. And I was so fond of it, I actually was going to apply for a transfer. I wanted to live in China or Hong Kong, which would become China anyway. The only reason it didn't happen was because I got elected to Parliament in 1997. So I'm very, very much a Sinophile, very keen on China. I don't think they're perfect. Obviously not. You've listed some of the things that we might say are suboptimal, but frankly, they've killed far fewer people in wars than Britain has in the last 30 years. So from a military perspective, what's the threat?
You're correct, as in, do I think Chinese jackboots are going to get onto the shore of Dover? No, they're not. But they're going to dominate Asia. I think they're going to either invade or take over countries and take over those governments. I think they're going to be a threat for Asia. Now, if they're a threat for Asia, that means they're going to have even more power. And the question we need to ask ourselves is, what sort of world do we want to live in? Do we want to live in a world where the world power and the world authority is China, a so-called communist dictatorship that has an appalling record and the way it treats its own people? Let's not forget there's millions of Uyghur Muslims in camps. You know, the people are disappearing all the time in China. It's not the future I want to live in. At the moment, we live under the American hegemony, which again isn't perfect. They inherited that from the British. Again, that wasn't perfect. But when you compare our morals, our standards, our traditions, our norms, of course we think that's better because we were raised in that environment compared to an alien culture. Yeah.
Well, okay, you say that that there's that great huge military, and it's enormous. Their military is absolutely phenomenally big, and the man in charge of it, Xi Jinping, has probably one of the three most powerful militaries in the world. Those three being Russia, China, and of course the United States. But I don't get the feeling that Xi Jinping, the man in the picture, is determined to invade and conquer loads of countries. Now, I had a very interesting lunch with the Chinese representative. Oh, this is decades ago now when I was an MP at the Chinese embassy about Taiwan. And he was very clear. It wasn't Xi Jinping, obviously, it was somebody else. But he was very clear. He said to me that China regards Taiwan as Chinese territory, that it was forcibly taken from China when it was weak, and they want it back. But after that, they don't really have territorial ambitions. Now, you mentioned Tibet. That was 70 years ago. And I could highlight a whole bunch of places that Britain has managed to forcibly seize, certainly in its imperial heyday. Well, China doesn't have the desire to militarily dominate the world. They have the desire to economically do it. And I think rather than seeing the boots of Chinese soldiers on the ground, what we see crate after crate of made in China materials. Yeah, there you go. Coming to this country with stuff we want to buy. Why would China want to have military ambitions, with the exception of Taiwan? And by the way, I've been there, and frankly, Taiwan and China seem to get on pretty well. That was my impression. Whatever we see in the press, there's a lot of massive amount of economic interaction between the two. But why would China want to invade and militarily obstruct itself when it's already dominating the world with cratefuls of stuff we buy?
I would say that's called human nature. Human nature. Men in power want to conquer. Men in power want to rule the world. Men in power want to be gods. We've seen that throughout the whole of history. Now, is China telling us their plan? Is China telling us, oh, we're going to invade here, we're going to invade there? No, they're not. Has any country ever informed the world of their intentions? Did Hitler inform us of his intentions? No one ever informs the world about their secret plans about how they want to dominate the region, dominate their neighbours. So there's 2 points there. The first point is, if none of that's true, and let's say they have no intentions whatsoever of doing anything I've said. First of all, how do we believe them? Because they're a dictatorial, authoritarian state. How do we trust them? The answer is we can't trust them. So therefore, we need to plan for when they do the unthinkable. So we need to plan for that anyway. They have a huge army, but wars in the future, if the Third World War, to a certain extent, will not be fought on the ground, will not be fought with jackboots on the ground. It'll be a technology war. It's already started now. It's cyber attacks. It's it's infiltrating governments. It's infiltrating economies. It'll be drones. It'll be all sorts of things. So them having this huge army, and again, if they've got no military ambitions, why are they spending so much money on their army?
Because America keeps saying, we're going to get you. America keeps saying, you better be ready. And why does America have a huge army? Now you can see the problems in Russia, the whole different argument. As you know, I tend to think that we provoked Russia into the situation in Ukraine, but let's stay away from that for now. The fact is, America doesn't need this huge army. When it's bothering its neighbors, Venezuela and so on, they got small armies. Why would you not say the same about America? Why don't you say to America, why don't you have an army a tenth the size?
Oh, no, I completely agree. And let's base it on America. Why does America need such a big army to rule the world? To ensure everyone does as they're told, because we're living in an American hegemony. But that's exactly what China wants to do. China is competing against America. China knows it needs a huge army. First of all, you're right, to protect itself from invasion, because no one should trust another country to say, oh, we're not going to invade you, let's be friends, because you can't trust anybody. We've seen it throughout history where countries have, reduced their weapons or reduced their army and then been invaded. Look what happened to Ukraine. Ukraine gave up their nuclear arsenal and then now been invaded. So you need to be careful with that. But everything I hear from China, everything I see makes me afraid. Now, I could be wrong. All this could be paranoia, but history tells us to be paranoid about a growing military threat in the world. You should be paranoid because we don't know how that's going to end.
A couple of comments coming in there. A really good point from Colin. It's army science means nothing when you lead the world in tech, and they clearly do. And there's an earlier comment, which I can't see now, that they have massive amount. Yeah, Colin, it's again. They have lots of rare earth minerals. And that's true. The point here is,
let me just jump on they lead the world in tech. No, they don't. They lead the world in stealing other people's tech. That's how they lead the world. They don't invent and create anything. Again, that's another reason why not only should we. It sounds like I'm contradicting myself, but that's why I know we can beat them eventually. Not maybe in a war, but that's why I know we can beat them, their authoritarian regime, because they create nothing of value. They only steal.
I just so disagree with you. I really do. There are only 3 countries that have independently gone into space. First, Russia. They got the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin. Then America, who then managed to make it to the moon. They heard an interesting debate about who really got to the moon first yesterday. And then China. And China are absolutely going hell for leather to get to the moon with men and women, I guess. And you can't say that a nation that was able to use maybe to some extent Russian technology, but then run with it and get space stations into orbit, that they're backward. They're not backward. And there's no doubt that stuff that we're using to have this conversation right now was made in China. I just totally disagree with you that China always steals. They were notorious for doing it a long time ago, but everyone's doing it. Everyone's doing it. America does it. I don't have an issue with it. And in the old days, people would say, oh, you can't buy stuff from China. It's not very good quality. It's really good quality. People buy Chinese cars right, left, and center because they're the cheapest. People buy, even though I think it's a terrible waste of money, they buy wind turbines made in China, solar panels made in China. Our lives, if you took everything that was Chinese and made it vanish, our lives would be impoverished. We'd be rubbing the sticks together.
Let me pick up on one phrase you keep using: made in China, made in China. Yes, it's all made in China. It's all invented, designed, and created in the West. It's not created and designed in China. China may. So name one thing that China has invented, created in the last. Go on.
Chinese food.
You're being flippant. You're being
no,
flippant
I'm not.
now.
I'm not. What I'm saying, no, you're disregarding that now. But people don't think of Chinese takeaways as made in China, but their culture is pervasive. I looked up when we were preparing for today's show how many Chinese people live in Britain. It's something like 500,000. But they don't cause problems. They're not notorious for being criminals. I've been told repeatedly that the Chinese embassy has one of the best records in terms of not violating Britain's rules of any embassy in the United Kingdom. What else? I'm pretty sure a lot of phone technology is in collaboration between China and Taiwan. They work closely on it. Let's not pretend otherwise. They're often pointed out as leading the world on what I said before, which is green technology. Now, I think that we're going about the whole green thing completely the wrong way, but they are the powerhouse of the stuff that is coming in to stop the to stock the ambitions of misguided Western governments that think there's a climate crisis. But it's all coming from China. And the cars, I said before, are you seriously saying to me that Chinese cars are just copies of the cars from the West? I don't think so.
All the technology is, yes. China have not invented anything. They've not contributed to technology in the last 50 years. They may have got someone else's technology and maybe have tweaked it a little bit. They don't invent anything. They're a manufacturing powerhouse. That's what they are, and that's what you keep referring to. They are a powerhouse of manufacturing, and most of the stuff we buy is made in China. But they didn't create it. They just produce it. Okay,
I'm just looking now, and I've just got in on another screen. I asked them to answer the question: what has China invented? This goes back away, Nick. Paper making, the compass, gunpowder, and printing. They're pretty big inventions, Nick.
Thousands of years ago. Years ago. I'm talking about today.
I don't think.
The fact you can't name anything proves the point. Because if there was things out there that Chinese had invented that would change the world, you'd be able to go this and that and there. They're a manufacturing powerhouse. That's all they are.
Well, we're going to go to a break, and magically, I may have more answers for you after the break, but I'm not sure I will. But I'm going to put after the break. I'm going to put to you actually that I'll give you the last word before the break, but I'm going to put to you that they're brilliant at innovation, and they take ideas and they make them better. But go on, last word to you before we go to the break.
They do. And that's what Japan and Korea have also been successful at. That's why they're successful economies now, is because they take Western ideas, Western technologies, and improve them or shrink them and do something with them. But the original concept, the original idea are always Western. They're never Eastern.
Well, okay. I'll see if I can refute that claim before the end of the show. Before we do, though, I promised Claire Dyer, one of our absolute stalwarts here, one of the groundbreaking presenters we have, that I would be promoting her show this week, and I will. Dire Consequences is a tremendously adventurous and brave contribution by Claire, where she lifts the lid on things that really shouldn't be happening in the United Kingdom. Everything from child abuse through police corruption to cover-ups to liars who work for Transport for London. She is a one-person army of her own. She could take on China probably, but she'll never need to, Nick. So this is what Claire Dyer does on Dire Consequences. And if you want to watch Dire Consequences, we usually play them on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and we repeat them quite often as well because they're superb. And they don't really have a sell-by date because the problems sadly persist. You can also find them in the archive if you go to Unprecedented TV on YouTube. And please do subscribe. Doesn't cost anything for now. I'd be very grateful if you do subscribe, though, and then you'll get notifications too. But in the meantime, myself and Nick Buckley are having an argument. I'm a Sinophile, a lover of China. He's a Sinophobe, which sounds like he's scared of China. Maybe he is, but he's just not got my positivity. Before the break, you asked me a question, and that was, what has China done? What have the Chinese ever done for us?
Yeah.
He might have said. And I thank the team for this because they're working hard behind the scenes. I hope that they're on my side. I'm not quite sure. I think they are. High-speed rail is something which they have definitely advanced. They did
not create high-speed rail.
Stephenson's rocket. You think Stephenson's rocket back in the 18th century? Well, I can't remember when it all began. That entitles us to say that we invented high-speed rail. Come on, Nick.
No,
just because you're in the north. Yorkshire invented everything, did it?
China did not invent the first high-speed railway line. I don't know who did, but I can guarantee it wasn't China.
Mobile payments. How about that? Can you tell me factually they didn't invent that? They've been absolute pioneers in it.
Again, I'm absolutely sure they did not invent online payments.
5G technology, e-commerce, AI, robotics, quantum computing. They have made massive contributions and all of that. You just saying that doesn't mean that you're right.
No. You keep changing the goalpost. No, you keep saying things like it was it's all produced in China. Well, it was produced in China. It wasn't invented in China. Now you're saying they've contributed to it. Well, they may have contributed to these things, but they didn't create or invent any of these things. They've contributed to it. They've tweaked it. They've changed it slightly to fit them. They didn't create any of these things.
But okay, your argument seems to be if they didn't come up with the very first idea, they can't take credit for the advancement. So you've got Stephenson's rocket in Britain, in the north of England, which means that I suppose Yorkshire can take the credit for all high-speed rail all over the world, including the maglev, this levitating thing, all our idea. I suppose because a lot of work was done on electricity in this country, all the electricity networks in China owe their foundation to Britain. Britain invented everything. Let's go further back. Right, Africa invented humans. What was called Lucy, the original woman. So all inventions, high-speed rail, e-commerce, it's all thanks to Lucy. Let's go right to the start. This is the ludicrous argument you're making. I put it to you. No, I think it's perfectly legitimate to take a good idea and make it better, but you don't want China to have it.
No, of course of course they take ideas and improve them. Of course they do. And I'm sure they've contributed to many things and made it better, and positive they have. The point I'm trying to make, and the point I was making, was they invent nothing themselves.
Well, I actually don't. I think it's almost a moot point. Maybe we'll just have to drop it. It's becoming a philosophical discussion because for me, if somebody gives me an idea and I improve on it, I can take credit for that. For example, we use a system called StreamYard. It's a really good system for the programming, and it's sophisticated. It's not that easy to get the most out of it unless you really apply yourself. But it's a brilliant system, and it's definitely designed for professional usage. We have a bank of computers. We have people using it. Now, I'd like to think if StreamYard came to see the unprecedented operation, they would say, we're really pleased with how you have developed this. And we might even make some suggestions on how they can make it even better. Now, I wouldn't say StreamYard would then sit in my studio here or in the other studios we have and say, oh, we had all of that worked out ourselves. They would say, thank you for innovating with our idea. And it's symbiotic. That doesn't undermine StreamYard and it doesn't undermine us. But it seems to me that you want to take a different attitude here. You want to say, if China didn't come with the original idea, they can't take credit for the improvements. And there's no doubt at all that China has improved on a basic, I suppose, original Russian design on rockets that go to space. Britain does not launch manned space stations. China does. But you wouldn't even give them that credit.
I give him credit for doing it, but you want to give him credit as if it was an amazing thing to do. Well, no, 50, 60 years ago, Russians and Americans were sending people into space and landing on the moon. And 70 years later, you think it's an amazing thing that China has a space program that wants to get to the moon. Well, it's about out of date 50, 60 years later. It might be a nice thing. It might be a clever thing. They may be doing it better. But it's nothing amazing. Nothing China does that is amazing.
I just think you just got a downer on China. HSBC, there's a point here. Williams says HSBC is owned by China. It used to be in Canary Wharf. Apparently USA invented hypersonic missiles, probably did. But once again, I just think it's shows there's so much debate going on. Apologies, I can't get through all of this. Yes, China, not me, says China steal very little. Western corporates are given the rights to produce. And China and Hammer 88 makes a good point. They landed on the far side of the moon first because they stole it from the West. Well, all right, they're arguing with you. They're agreeing with you there, Nick. The fact is, Hammer 88, they did it. They landed on the far side. It's not the dark side, by the way. The dark side of the moon is a great Pink Floyd album. The far side of the moon does get sunshine, but it's really a tricky place to land. I just put it to you. I put it to viewers. I put it to people in the chat that the reality here is China are great innovators, and it doesn't matter who came up with the idea first. They run with it. Why else would China be now the manufacturing powerhouse of the world? They're the hand that build America, Britain, France, Europe. And we're all happy to buy their stuff. We moan about them, and we have all these big spy scandals and everything else, and China spy scandal explained all of this. I mean, there's chalk and cheese. Xi Jinping, one of the three most powerful men in the world, and Keir Starmer, who isn't? but we were sitting there rubbing, sort of wringing our hands and worrying and rubbing our hands in worry. When actually we've got nothing to worry about. If we were really that scared, Nick, why do we endlessly buy products which have Chinese microchips in them, which they could easily have a backdoor so China can see everything you're looking at?
Oh, the answer's that simple. For decades now, we've been run by incompetent idiots in this country who have never put the country first. That's why we're in such a mess we're in. That's why we closed down all our manufacturing and sent it all to China, because they could produce it cheaper. They never contemplated the unemployment in this country, that people in this country who may not be academically gifted, who would be perfect for manufacturing jobs. They never thought about how we need to be self-sufficient in certain things. I remember during COVID, we don't even produce paracetamol in this country. We had to go around the world trying to buy paracetamol. We don't create steel in this country now anymore, which if there's a war, we're going to need steel. We've made so many mistakes in this country. Our leaders have made those mistakes, and China has been clever enough to be the beneficiary of those mistakes.
Matt Malone makes an interesting point here. I'm not being selective. I'm just reading them as they're coming in. No, don't do that. No, my view on China is clear. I would have lived there, and your view is clear. And you beforehand, you had a different view, and I enjoyed the conversation. Matt Malone says China is great as it's working for the greater good of China. Maybe not for all its citizens, but UK could be great if we did not have a government that worked. If we did not have a government that worked for the good of the British people. Okay, syntax error there, I think, but essentially we could, if we had a government that actually worked for us instead of essentially against us by accident or design, then we could be better. I agree with Matt Malone. If that's what you're saying, don't want to put words in your mouth, Matt. Not Me says Western outsourcing started back in the 1970s, and Thatcher exported our industry and sold out tooling to them. That's the point, Nick. You can sit here and moan about it, but we did it to ourselves. We could make our cars. We could make our aeroplanes. Britain had an incredible aviation industry in the 20th century. Some of the finest craft ever built were from the UK, but we don't do it anymore. Well, we do with British aerospace, but we don't have our own indigenous homegrown operation, but China does. China builds its own aircraft. Now, you might say, oh, no, China can't take credit for building aircraft, which is working hard on doing, because the Wright brothers should be credited. Anything that China builds, it's the Wright brothers. 1903, Kitty Hawk. I suppose that's what you'll say.
We did all this to ourselves. You're completely correct. And one of the comments you read out then about China looks after the Chinese people in China, and they do, and that's something we haven't done for a long time. And I think that is why you're at the position you're at. We become such internationalists. We don't look across the world and we don't see danger. We don't see states now where we think they're our enemy. And with the best intentions, because you're a nice person, you're projecting that across the world. You're projecting that onto China, going, the Chinese people, the Chinese government are nice people because they must be nice people because I like them. Now, history tells us that we are a violent, nasty creature and we're always at war with each other. That's the history of the human race. So for you to look at China and think China's not a threat, what happens if you're wrong?
Well, then we all fry, or we have to learn Chinese. If Chinese was a straightforward language and I wasn't 60, I would be learning Chinese. A couple of points here which are coming in. I'm commenting because more than any show I've ever presented here on Unprecedented, this has caused a huge debate. Matt Malone says, yes, correct. There was a syntax error. There we go, Matt. You see, I'm paying attention, but I forgive you. You should see some of the stuff I do. I put syntax errors out sometimes on some of the adverts, and also the team does, but I'll take the hit for that. Holly says, quite the British working for the British would be interesting. And that's the point. China's working for China. And why shouldn't they? They shouldn't be working for Britain. They do work for us, but we pay them to do it. Here's Hammer 88 adding to the list, superconducting maglev train. Oh, wait, they didn't invent the steam train. Exactly, Nick. That's the point. You know what? If China takes 100 most important inventions in the world and makes them all better, I got no problem with that, because they're making everyone's lives better. And that's, if they do that, not only would I praise them, but I'd buy those things from them. China has the biggest high-speed rail network on the planet. They're a huge country as well, of course. But I'm putting it to you, Nick, that you said something really interesting. What you said was, oh, well, we're a nasty creature. I just fundamentally disagree. Maybe we're getting to the heart of the matter here. I actually think human beings are basically good. I think that Russians are good, Chinese is good, Germans are good, French are good. Maybe not their president, but the rest of them are good. And you think, well, actually, we need to control the species because they're a miserable, horrible creature.
Oh, I don't think we need to control the species. I think the species will do what the species does. The point I'm trying to make is you look throughout the whole of the history of the human race, it's war, it's killing, it's conquering. That's what we're designed to do. We're designed to live in small tribes. Our tribes have got bigger now, they're called nation states. Those tribes are quite happy getting along with each other in good times. But when resources are short, when things happen, they will turn on each other, not because they hate each other, not because we're evil to the heart, because we're not evil. It's all about ensuring we survive. And for us to survive in hard times, it means other people can't survive. We want their food. We want their water. We've seen in the last century what can happen. Look at Rwanda, million people killed with machetes. Look at Nazi Germany. Look at Cambodia. You know, we can see what humans do. Individually, on one, we're nice creatures. We try to get along. But in dangerous times, we go back to tribalism, and it's my tribe against the world.
But I now realize why you and I have a different view about China. And actually, it's really interesting insight into our mutual world views. I fundamentally think that the human race is good. And I think you fundamentally believe, especially when we're under pressure, that the human race becomes bad. That's really interesting. And so for me, it's a natural extension of my optimism. And you've said it yourself, I tend to be an optimist, perhaps to the point of naivety at times. I think that China is essentially trying to do its best. And it does want to dominate the world, but it does it through economics. And you don't incinerate your markets. So they don't need to be politically in charge of Britain as long as we keep buying our stuff from them. You're saying that sooner or later there'll be a crisis. It's a dictatorship. It has to have enemies. I just don't see it like that. When I've been in China, they were basically saying, how do you do this? Actually, it ties in very much to what we're both saying. Saying, how do you do this? How can we do it better? What can we do here that means that we can do this as well as you can? Now, I worked in fast-moving consumer goods, stuff like soap powder and washing up liquid and so on. These things aren't going to make or break a military operation. But they wanted to innovate. They wanted to do it better. And then they wanted to sell the outcome back to us. Interestingly enough, just got to make this one. This is a lovely one. First last asked, who invented the wheel? I happen to know this. The first evidence of wheels was from Mesopotamia, around 6,000 years ago. So, Nick, you would say if they produce a really great car, you'd say, well, they can't take credit for it. The Mesopotamians should take credit for that because it's got wheels.
You're hooked up on this word, take credit for. It's not about taking credit for. My original point was really saying that the Chinese as a culture and the West, not the West, the East, and especially Asia, don't invent anything. If it wasn't for the West, they wouldn't have any technology really in Asia because it all comes from the West. These people don't create anything, don't invent anything. They take our ideas and improve them. And your example then of being in China working for that
company, Procter & Gamble.
Yeah, exactly. And what were they all saying to you? What do you invent? How what do you do? Because they wanted to steal your ideas and improve your washing powder and sell it back to you, because they couldn't create their own stuff and sell it to us. They have to take what we have done, and then of course they improve it. Of course they might make it better. Of course they do. There's nothing wrong in that, and that takes some intelligence to do that. But without the West to begin with, they will have nothing to improve. That's why I think in a third world war, that's why it's going to be a technology-based war, and that's why I think at this moment in time we will probably win that war.
Well, just following your argument forward, if they make what we do better, then even if you were right, they could make better guns, rockets, hypersonic missiles, bombs, jamming devices, radar, and everything else. And it doesn't matter if at the end, when General Buckley's on top of the mountain waving a made in China white flag, you say, oh, well, we lost, but only because you stole our ideas. It doesn't really matter. and
No, go on.
I was going to say the space program, I keep coming back to it because I think a space program is a classic example of how advanced the country is. This is an impression of I don't think this is in space yet and won't be all that soon. But this is an example of something China wants to put into space, and they have put space stations up. There is no way on Earth that every single thing in a space station like that was robbed from somewhere else. You have to innovate. And also, when you've got 5 million graduates coming out of universities every single year, like China does, it would beg a belief if not one of those 5 million graduates had an original thought.
They may have an original thought, but you don't know what it is, because we can't name one thing that China invented.
You're ignoring the thing. I've listed them before, but you just ignored them all. You said, oh, yeah, they're all invented somewhere else.
And they were. They were. None of those things came out of China. They weren't invented in China.
Fireworks. You said just because
1,000 years ago.
Just because gunpowder was invented a long time ago, it doesn't count. Actually argues against you even more.
No, my original premise was, what have China invented in the last 50 years, technology-wise? And the answer is
we went through them, maglev and some other things like that. But all right, sorry, I keep talking over you. I'm genuinely agitated. I think that's why. But go on. I'm going to give you the last word on not invented here. Go ahead.
I don't want to go into the invention. I think we've covered the invention things.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Now. Let's get back to
in that case, let me read one comment from Pittsburgh Dude 87. I wonder if you are in Pittsburgh. I don't even think China wants to dominate the world. I think they want to excel in general and have win-win cooperation with the rest of the world. That's what I think too. I really think that. And Pittsburgh adds, it's preposterous that China hasn't invented anything. Until the 1700s, China was more advanced than the so-called West. China invented paper, ice cream, noodles, gunpowder, fireworks, etc. Well, that's a good point. Up until the 1700s, China led the world.
And up to the 1700s, China wasn't a world power and we weren't afraid of China. This discussion is about, is China a threat today? So, we can go back thousands of years and find great things in China. My point was, over the last 50 years, technology, what they invented. We've done that bit to death now.
Okay,
so,
all right. Okay.
I think the point I want to make is, we need to understand men in power. Men in power are dangerous. In a society like China, in a communist, semi-communist dictatorship, to reach the top of that triangle, of that apex, of that pyramid, you have to be ruthless. You're not a nice person if you can reach the top of any socialist, communist dictatorship. You're not a nice person to get there, because you couldn't get there if you were a nice person. And let me leave you with this, a quote from Genghis Khan. So that's next to China, part of the Mongol Empire. He said, it's not enough that I should succeed, but that everybody else should fail.
Okay, he's not in charge anymore.
No.
But and between those two, I know who I'd rather have dinner with. I think I'd learn more from Xi Jinping than I would from Keir Starmer. And of course, if you look at the world, those are two of the three most powerful men on it. The third one being Vladimir Putin, who punches way above his weight, because they've got 150 million people in Russia. And, well, they did lots of inventing. They did invent the first rocket that took a man into space. Yeah. Rocket's so good that they're still pretty much using essentially the same model to go to and from the International Space Station. For me, and it's a good place perhaps to finish, I haven't convinced you, you haven't convinced me, but Xi Jinping and Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin essentially rule the world now. Modi in India wants to be part of that gang. He's got a way to go yet, but he's catching up. I would say, and I'll let you say it in your words, I don't want to put words in your mouth. I would say that for me, China is far more benign than people make out. I think that much of the chat, and I'm really grateful to all the people who've suddenly started getting involved in that chat. I would say that China wants to be dominant, but it wants to be dominant economically. Xi Jinping and his people, regardless of their political system, want a good standard of living. You've highlighted some of the social challenges there, and I could throw some out from here. Britain has no excuse for having homeless indigenous population, no excuse at all. But fundamentally, I don't think they want war. I think they want Taiwan, and they've explained it very clearly, because it was taken forcibly from them, really, if you look at the history of the place. But they don't want war, and we present them as some kind of a belligerent nation, and I just don't feel that. The reason I wanted to move to China in 1997, because I wanted to grow and exist and live in a country which really understood what it was doing. They built or extended something like 100 airports in the last 20 years. We haven't even been able to get the third runway for Heathrow in that time. So for me, China represents a go-getting country that is industry provided, that people are scared of and people are resentful of. But at the end of the day, they win because we give them pounds and they give us product. Your concluding comments here on the moral maze.
My concluding comment would be this. We always have to look towards the future. We always have to look at who our enemies potentially are in the world. There's no point living in this world and running your country oblivious to what's going on around you and who are those potential enemies. I could be completely wrong about China. Let's say I am. Let's say you're perfectly correct. They have no intentions of war. But yet, if I get my way, we will be watching China. We will be creating strategies to defend from China. And if it never comes to pass, we haven't lost anything. But if we take your position where China is benevolent, it's going to cause us no problems, and it turns out you're wrong, then we've done no preparation. We've been blindsided and we're in big trouble.
Okay, that's a well put comment. There's a line, I think it's in The Art of War, which is another Chinese invention.
Yeah.
Happy is the man who in times of peace plans for war. Maybe that's why you have large armies which you don't intend to use. The best generals, in my experience, are the ones who don't celebrate war, but enter it with grim resignation when it has to happen. And they're not bloodthirsty. The war that I think we're going to fight will be to try and keep our economy afloat. And to me, the biggest enemy is not China, it's Rachel Reeves. But there we go. Nick, really enjoyed that conversation, and it seems to me that so have our viewers. If you did like that, I'm on pretty much every morning at 9 o'clock. I say a big thank you there to Nick Buckley. Really quite refreshing to explore that. We'll come back to this again and do have your say, and I'll get involved in the chat on X at Lembit Öpik. Do please follow there. And as I said before, do subscribe to Unprecedented TV. If you want to find it really quickly, put my name in as well, Lembit. You'll get straight there on YouTube. Lots of other shows coming up today and every day. Very close to a really regular schedule now. So thank you to Nick. Thank you to the team. But more than anything, thank you to you for having the courage to think for yourself. That's what we do here at Lembit Öpik Live and on Unprecedented TV. Have a great day.
Immediate ceasefire in Gaza. The return of the sausages.